So what I think about this whole collecting thing,
you're kind of killing your whole idea.
I kind of find it dumb.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the SFX Loop again. I'm taking a short break from the guitar and gear related stuff just because I've felt like talking about movies a little bit more for the past couple of weeks. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be making that content anymore. It just means that there's going to be a few of these videos throughout the holidays to get me into next year, and then there will be more FX Loop type stuff. It'll probably be next week or maybe the week after or something like that. But anyway, how you doing? Jay Byrne, and I had an idea for a video for this week because I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube about physical media collecting. There's a lot of people putting up videos about kind of, oh God, what are they calling it? Like the pitfalls and the problems with being a physical media collector. And I just wanted to put my perspective into this because I am 49 years old and I have been collecting movies since I was like 18 years old, okay? Which means that when I started collecting, and it's always been kind of a part of my personality, like everybody I've known has known me as like Blu-ray Jay or DVD Jay, the guy who collects movies and buys movies. So I've had a large collection of movies for a very long time. Currently, I've got about 1,500 movies. Although at my max, I had about 2,500, I think. I run out of space and then I have to sell things off. But yeah, there's been tons of videos on YouTube lately about, you know, should you collect movies? Shouldn't you collect movies? You know, what are some people's personal habits when it comes to collecting movies? And it seems like there's a lot of younger physical media collectors out there, and they're just trying to grasp their head around the concept of just being a collector in general. And I figured I'd give my perspective on how, you know, my collecting habits for many, many years now. I mean, I started collecting movies back when VHS was the thing. Back in just out of high school, 18, 19 years old, I had a collection of probably about 50 VHS tapes. Because I mean, back then, this is like in the 90s, early 90s, the only way to see the things that you wanted to see was to either watch them on TV, you could record them off cable if you had a VCR, and we did a lot of that. Or renting the movies and making copies, which technically you weren't supposed to do, but we did anyway. But then you could go out and buy a physical copy, which would have been a VHS cassette. And at that point, I was collecting videotapes, VHS tapes. And like I said, I had about 50 of them probably. And they were all my favorites, classics. I've always been a horror fan, so I, you know, watched those. Then went from video to laserdisc, which was the biggest, it was kind of like the premium format of the time. It's the reason why I had it, because I was always a fan of quality, higher quality, this and that. I always wanted to see the movie in the best possible quality. Back then, to me as a collector, and to many people who were collecting back in that time, the idea of collecting physical media, of collecting movies, was so that you could watch it in theater quality in your home. So the goal was to be as good looking as a theatrical print on a larger screen in your home. Which, if you look at it from modern standards, it's not that hard to make something look as good as a theatrical print. A theatrical print, a 35mm theatrical print, the resolution on a theatrical print was fine when you were watching it in the movie theater. But if you were to watch a transfer of that theatrical print, there's many companies now, like Screen Factory and stuff, that have put out movies that were transferred from a theatrical print. And when you see what the quality of an actual theatrical print looks like on a good set now, getting that quality back then wasn't the hardest thing to do. It was actually relatively simple. You know, it wasn't the hardest thing to do. But that's what we were achieving. We wanted, you know, the surround sound, and we wanted a large screen, and we wanted something to look at least as good, at least I did, as a movie theater. Because in my 20s and going into my 30s and whatnot, I worked in movie theaters. I was a projectionist, I was an usher, I was a cashier. I did pretty much every job you could do in a movie theater. And, you know, I was used to watching films on the big screen in a theater. So I wanted to replicate that experience at home. I never owned a projector or anything like that because that stuff was just too expensive. Although, like I said, I got into the premium formats, going from VHS to laserdisc. And laserdisc was really not that better than VHS. It was just cleaner. The thing was, it was almost like you got a little bit clearer, sharper of an image quality. And you could get stuff like widescreen versions, and you could get commentaries. Criterion started with laserdiscs. I mean, their first releases were on the laserdisc format because that was the premium format, and they were making collector's editions for people who wanted to buy that stuff. I mean, in my 20s, I racked up some serious debt because I was collecting laserdiscs, and back then, laserdiscs went anywhere from $50 to $100 on the cheap side. A regular laserdisc, just a bog standard widescreen version of a movie with like a trailer from like Universal or something, was around $50. That's what it actually cost to buy movies back then. When I was buying videotapes, VHS tapes, they were cheaper. They were around $20 or so. 20 seems to be the number that was used for many, many years. It seems to be like $20 was like the price, $19.99. It didn't start creeping up over that until I'd say the last 10, 15 years or so. But for laserdiscs, though, if you wanted a box set, if you bought like a collector's edition, like I had Jaws, I had a bunch of them actually, of big box sets that were collector's editions. They were like $100, $200, $300 in some cases. I think Jaws, when I bought it, cost almost $200 to get the Jaws Laserdisc box set, which was the collector's edition of Jaws. It had the full documentary, it came with a book, it was in a big box. But yeah, I had Laserdiscs for a while. I probably had close to 150 Laserdiscs at the peak of my collecting. And then I decided to move to Chicago. We moved to Chicago for a couple of years. And when I moved to Chicago, I couldn't bring all that stuff with me, so I ended up selling my Laserdiscs. Because at that point, DVD had started to take over. DVD came into the picture, and then all of us who had Laserdiscs were like, well, why are we spending all this money on Laserdiscs when we can get a DVD? Which, in all actuality, wasn't much better quality than the Laserdisc. The early DVDs were comparable to Laserdisc quality. The only thing they had going for them is they were on a CD-sized disc, so you could actually, they were easier to store. And they were a bit more durable. Quality-wise, though, there was like more compression in the image, so it didn't necessarily look better than a Laserdisc. But you could get better sound, because you could get Dolby Digital sound, you get PCM sound. You could get the Dolby Digital sound on Laserdiscs as well, though. Towards the end, Laserdiscs started to have 5.1 surround. If you had a system where you could plug in the digital, there was a digital out on the back of your Laserdisc player. If you had a surround sound receiver, and I always had the surround sound receivers, but for Laserdiscs, I never had a way to do the 5.1. But I could decode just the regular Dolby surround. So that's how I used to watch most of my Laserdiscs that were in stereo. It was the Dolby surround track. And so I actually sold off, I think, 75 of my Laserdiscs for like, I don't know, $50 or something. And it was a lot of Laserdiscs. It was something like 75 Laserdiscs, and they sold them for like $50 or $60 or something like that. It was literally like $1 a disc, because at that point they had no value. Nobody wanted them. Nobody wanted VHS. Nobody wanted Laserdiscs. Everybody was interested in the newest format that was out, which was DVD. If you were collecting movies or you were collecting anything, you were buying DVDs. Because when DVDs came out, DVDs kind of took over. They were the de facto format. And to this day, DVDs still take up a huge share of the market. A lot of people still just buy DVDs. A lot of people buy DVDs because they can buy them cheap at like dollar stores, and they can buy them used for like $1, $2. They're not worth much. You can't get much money for them. I mean, I took my DVD collection and put them all in like these plastic sleeves so that I could like save space. I was able to put like 200 DVDs on like one shelf. Because like I said before, you start to run out of space when you have all these movies. But so then I went from, I was on DVD, and DVD was when the collector bug was there for Laserdisc, but it was so expensive that it was hard to do. But DVD was the collector bug, man. $20 a pop, I could buy anything. And at that point, you had a lot of companies like Synapse. Synapse was big back then in the DVD era. And you had Anchor Bay, which was like the huge one. For DVD, Anchor Bay was the big deal. Anchor Bay kind of came in during the Laserdiscs. It was Elite Entertainment. And for Laserdiscs, you had a company called Elite, which was doing like the Evil Dead, Dawn of the Dead. They were doing these special edition box sets that like companies like Scream Factory and stuff do now, but for Laserdiscs. And when they shifted over to DVD, it's like Anchor Bay as a company got the rights for pretty much everything that had been Elite. So they started releasing all of Elite's catalog, plus other stuff. We started getting the George Romero movies. We got slasher films. We got giallo films. Big deal at that point for DVD with Anchor Bay was when they were releasing the Dario Argento and the Lucio Fulci films. It was like, wow, we're finally getting good watchable copies of these Italian horror films that we'd heard about for years, or maybe we'd watched bootleg or had only seen on like import laserdiscs and whatnot. It was hard to see that stuff in like the mid 90s to the late 90s. Like you'd have to go to like these little hole in the wall video stores that dealt with basically like cult movies and classic films and stuff to be able to find those type of movies. All these imports from overseas and stuff like that. If you went to foreign films, it was hard to see foreign films back in that era, in the around 95 to 2000 era. So, I mean, I went hog wild with DVD. I had a lot of DVDs. Like I said, at my highest point, I probably had like 2,500 movies. And that's when Blu-ray started. And then I got into DVDs. Because, like, if you're familiar with physical media, you know, DVD went for a while. And then it was like the next format was coming along. And this format, and, you know, we fought it for a while, too. Us Blu-ray DVD collectors. We were like, I'm not doing this Blu-ray thing. What is this all about? High definition. These DVDs look fine. Because at that point, when we were collecting DVDs, it was less about the quality of the movie and more about the movie. And I think I missed that, actually. I missed that in collecting nowadays. I miss the notion that, you know, you're buying for the movie, not the collector aspect of it. Everyone's buying for the collectible boxes and the collector's this and collector's that. When I was collecting movies on video and Laserdisc, you were buying it for the movie, you know, and it was great if the movie had good quality. That was a bonus. And in a lot of cases with DVD, you could get widescreen movies, which was a big deal. I remember back in the day when we were watching them on CRTs, which were square for the most part, when DVD first came out. And a lot of people hated widescreen movies because they didn't like the black bars. They had a problem with the black bars on the screen. They're like, oh, it takes up half of my screen. Because if you're watching it on a 20-inch CRT and you're watching a scope film, literally it is like 1/3 of the screen in the middle. So you can kind of understand that. Until we started getting into widescreen, which would be like 16:9 television screens, and even then they were tube TVs, so they were big, they had big backs, they were heavy. I amassed a big collection with DVDs, and it was all about the movies that I wanted to see, movies that I wanted to collect. I was collecting directors, entire discographies, and this and that. Then Blu-ray comes into the picture. Well, first HD DVD showed up, and I never got into HD DVD. Blu-ray came out by Sony, and there was like this format war between HD DVD and Sony. HD DVD and Blu-ray by Sony. And Blu-ray won out. I mean, it was backed by Sony and the major studios, so you knew it was going to win. But Blu-ray won out, and so when Blu-ray won out, then I started saying, well, maybe I'll try this format. Because I was always the one, I was the guinea pig amongst the people that knew me. They knew if there was a new format, it was a higher quality type thing, oh, Jay was going to get it, you know what I mean? Because Jay did Laserdisc, Jay did Blu-ray, DVD, then Jay went into Blu-ray, started collecting Blu-rays, and at that point, man, the collection was growing strong, and it was getting big. And, I just buy everything that came out, and that I wanted, at least. And I can honestly say, at no point in my film collecting history did I ever have piles of movies that went unwatched. Right now I own around 1,500 movies, and I can tell you that every single one of these movies has been watched once, if not twice, maybe more times. There's certain ones I watch all the time. Now, granted, I can't watch all my movies all the time because it's impossible, but I only own now, because I've kind of curated the collection down to the stuff that I really want to own. That's why it's gotten smaller. I've literally sold almost 500 movies in the past couple of years. And that's the thing too, because a lot of collectors are they don't want to get rid of their stuff. It's like they need to have 5 different versions of the same movie. Honestly, I just want a usable, workable copy of the film in a cool package. Doesn't hurt. But I don't have to have every steelbook. I don't have to have every box set. As long as I have the movie I want in the best possible quality that I can watch it in my home, I'm happy. I'm okay with that. And I mean, I like bonus features. I find myself watching less and less bonus features as time goes on because they almost become just stuff. They're not as interesting anymore. When Scream Factory first came out with Blu-rays, this probably in the 2000s, around 2010-ish or so. I don't remember the exact year of those, but around that time is when Scream Factory was a big deal. Because they were releasing stuff like Halloween 2, Halloween 3, they were releasing foreign films. They were doing what Anchor Bay was doing for DVD. They kind of took over that market for Blu-ray. And, I mean, there were other companies. Blue Underground was a big one. Synapse, like I said, Severin was around at that time still. Those companies were big. Kino Lorber started during that time. Arrow came later because they were a UK company, and then they started releasing American releases. I remember some of their first American releases. Mark of the Devil was one of the first ones that they ever put out, and I was really excited about getting those because their packaging was just a little bit more premium. It was more Criterion-like, and the Criterion collection I collected a lot of those movies and stuff. But it's always been about the movies for me because I'm a big film fan and I worked in movie theaters and I'm a film buff. I've made some independent films myself. It's always been about the movies, and I love watching movies, and I loved collecting movies. But now we get to now. Now we're in the 4K phase. And as far as I'm concerned, going all the way from the VHS era all the way up to 4K, I feel like I'm at the end phase here. I'm almost 50 years old, okay? At some point, I have to stop buying the same exact movies, excuse me, over and over again. There are some films that I've bought 5, 6 times, the same movie. And it's always a promise of this is the best version, it's better quality audio, it's, got more bonus features, a documentary of this or that, so you go and you buy the new version. We're at a weird point now, though, with 4K. Where, while I appreciate the upgrades of 4K, I've kind of gotten used to Dolby Vision now that I finally have a set that can play Dolby Vision semi-properly, because Dolby Vision is very tricky with TVs. Certain TVs won't play Dolby Vision properly. On a lot of sets, HDR10 is the best way to go, but you need to have some sort of 4K player that has a scalable brightness on it. Like the Panasonic that I have, the UB820 or something like that is the number on it. I had an Oppo 203, and that was an excellent player for a long time. But it tended to have problems, and it started to, a lot of discs would skip. I sent it in, I had it fixed, I got it back, it worked great for a while, and then discs would skip. So I kind of gave up on that high-end, expensive 4K/Blu-ray player. I loved it while I had it. It was like the centerpiece of my setup. I was like, my Oppo was a big deal. But now that I've had the Panasonics, I've always been a fan of Panasonic DVDs, Laserdisc, Blu-ray players. Like Panasonic was always a name that I used a lot. So now that I got a good Panasonic player, it seems to play everything. I've had it for a while. It doesn't give me any problems for the most part. At least I know that if I need another one, I can go out and buy another one of these players. They're still available for now. But getting back to the 4K stuff right now. The problem with 4K is that in most cases, you're getting the same special editions that came out on Blu-ray on 4K. It's just upgraded picture quality. So you need to start for yourself deciding, do I want that 4K disc? Do I have to have a 4K disc of this movie? Is the Blu-ray I have okay? Because a lot of Blu-rays are transferred from a 4K master, and on a 55, 65-inch television screen in your apartment or your home or whatever, most people aren't going to notice too big of a difference between the 4K mastered Blu-ray and the 4K disc itself. There is a difference. There's a sharpness, color, there's a difference. But you have to be like an eagle-eyed like cinephile to actually really notice that difference. And I mean, I can tell, I can notice it, and I can appreciate it. But there are certain movies that I just kind of look at now and I go, I like this movie a lot, but the Blu-ray looks great. So why do I need the 4K disc? I mean, it's going to look a little bit better. But in some cases, I'm actually losing some of the bonus features and some of the stuff that I had on the Blu-rays in order to get the 4Ks, because I don't like to keep multiple copies of movies. Occasionally I'll have like 2 copies of the same movie just because there's something different. But I don't like to have multiple copies of the same thing. I got 1,500 movies. I got 1,500 movies. It's mostly all like just different films. Like, I don't have multiple copies of the same film. There's a couple of them that are, you know, duplicated in a set, in a single edition or whatever here and there. But nothing, I don't have a lot of that. But for me, 4K is the definite end format. If there's ever an 8K, which I don't think there will be, because I think physical media discs in general are kind of going the way of the dodo bird. They're disappearing because, honestly, we've all been collecting the same movies for so long. People that are in my shoes that have been collectors for this long, that there comes a point where you're like, I've got a really good copy of the movie. This 4K transfer is the best version of this movie I've ever seen. It looks better than any theatrical print I could have ever watched, which was the initial goal in the beginning. So, yeah, that's what you get to. And at this point in my collecting, it's not as much fun as it used to be. Because now it's just like, oh, I'm going to buy this movie again. I don't have to, but most of the time I want to. And I'm running into a lot. I take very good care of my stuff, and I'm running into a lot of discs. I go to watch a movie that I've had for a couple of years, and the disc doesn't play. It freezes and skips, and I got to get a replacement copy or get a new copy or just forget about it altogether. These discs don't last forever. Some of them might last a very long time. But when you've got like 1,500 movies like this, you can't be checking every single movie you have. So you'll go to grab something off the shelf that you've had for like 10 years, and then that disc won't play right. I mean, it might look spotless and perfect, but it doesn't play right. So that's something you got to think about. And that kind of discourages you after a while. You're like, well, am I going to keep buying these plastic pieces of disc, and they're going to start going bad on me? You know, yeah. That gets kind of weird. But anyway, you know, I've been collecting for a long time, many, many years. And like I said, 4K is my end game as far as collecting is concerned. And I do want to have a good collection of movies that I can keep, and I can have my library of films, because streaming services just never really did it for me. As a lot of times I don't even like to watch a movie on streaming. I'll buy the movie first, because if I know if I'm going to buy something, I won't watch it on streaming, because I want to actually watch the disc. I want to watch the quality that I get on a disc, not the quality I'm going to get through a streaming app. Very rarely do I watch a movie on streaming. I have to really want to see it and be kind of broke and not be able to buy the disc for a while. But, yeah. So I don't know, I've been ranting for a while. That's my physical media collecting stories. I'm an old old, yeah, well, I don't even know what to call myself on this. But I'm the old dude that's been collecting movies forever, since back in the VHS days. And let me tell you this, today's a real, even though it's harder to get the stuff now than it used to be, we're getting so much stuff now that we never got back in the day. But it's getting more and more limited, and it's harder to get your hands on it, and you've got to pre-order, and it's becoming a hassle, a huge hassle. So when you're somebody like me, you just start to say, well, I don't need this one, but I will definitely get this one. But I don't need this one, but I gotta have this one. You know, that's the way it works. But anyway, I love my movie collection, and I will always have a movie collection in one way, one form or another. It's gotten smaller over the years, definitely, but yeah, I have movies, so I've been collecting them for a very long time. But anyway, if you like this kind of content, like, subscribe, and I will, yeah, I didn't say...
Oh, wait!
Okay, Alice.
Champion.
What are your thoughts about collecting films?
I've been collecting films for years.
No, you haven't.
For years. I've seen every single movie made, horror movies, adventure movies.
No, give me an honest opinion. You're 10 years old. What are your thoughts about somebody that's my age that's been collecting movies? What are your thoughts about having this big of a movie collection? Do you like it? Do you find it strange?
I find it a little weird, like I know you've seen all these movies at least once, unless you're like a big collector that just like buys them for the boxes and stuff. This movie, for example, in a silver case. The movie, I don't even know what this movie's about. Rad. It looks like a pretty cool case.
It's about like it's bike rider. It's
when
like a
was
dirt
the
bike
last time you watched this?
I've honestly watched that movie once.
And when was that?
A couple years ago.
See, like, this is why I don't really like having like a humongous collection.
Yeah, but if I want to watch that movie, I have it.
True, but I mean, like I heard you saying out there, you could easily probably just see it on a streaming service.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, maybe not Rad, but I bet you, like, let's say like a movie like
something more like a bigger movie.
Like this.
I can't even give away a lot of these movies.
What?
Because nobody wants them. Like relatives and family members, to them, everybody's like switched over to streaming services now.
Then throw them away.
You have to throw them away. You've spent all this money on the films all these years. It's a collection. Like, you have pops in your room. You have some toys and stuff that you collect. Okay? Like,
I have video games that I actually play.
I have movies that I actually watch.
So what I think about this whole collecting thing...
You're kind of killing your whole idea.
I kind of find it dumb.
Why?
Because, I mean, like... like I said before, you can easily just watch these off of, like...
What if you wanted to watch your favorite movie, and you went on all the streaming...
My favorite movie is Back to the Future, by the way, all three.
Well, now it is, yeah, because you watched
amazing.
them, because you liked them.
Thank you, you're never wrong.
It's not that easy to find Back to the Future movies on the streaming services, and you have to pay for them if you want to watch them. They are available, but they cost money to rent if you want to watch them.
Oh, yeah, and you can rent it.
You can rent it. You can buy a copy that you can access. However, the studios that put those movies up can pull those movies anytime they want. So even if you pay $10 to buy that movie and you have it in your library...
But you'll get a refund.
No, you won't. No,
they don't give you refunds?
You don't get money back for it.
What do you mean?
No, okay, if you buy a game or a movie from Sony or Universal or any of these companies, and they decide that they want to pull that from... They don't want it to be out there anymore. They pull it off the service, it's gone. And you don't get any money back, and you can't access your movie anymore.
Well, I did not know that.
See?
Yeah, I have to say, like, I don't really like people, like, collecting, like, the same, like, different versions of the same thing. Because let's say, what would you rather do? Let's say you have this movie, let's just say Back to the Future, for example. And they're making up this new box set. Has all the movies you already have in 4K. You already have all the 4K versions. Yeah. The only difference you are getting is, let's just say, like, a Doc or Marty action figure included in the box and a free sticker.
See,
Is it worth it?
I personally wouldn't buy it again, as long as the copy that I have still
But
works.
some collectors
But there are the people.
would.
There are people out there that'll buy that just to have that. Yes.
Even though maybe, let's say for example, the Doc action figure is maybe like one of those ones that you could easily buy at like a Newberry Comics.
Yeah, you could find it.
They don't
somewhere
really
else.
think about that, and they're just like, oh, cool, limited edition action figure, buy. I'm out.
Right, later.
Boogie, boogie.